and I really must go. I'm leaving my Nancy, come a little closer, lay your head upon my shoulder, and let me hold you one more time before the whistle blows. Oh, come a little closer, lay your head upon my shoulder, and let me hold you one more time before the whistle blows.
Terry has been working at this project for 20 years. He won't admit that, but he has. And the point behind that is that family research is highly complicated, a lot of hours and a lot of time or whatever. So when we came across Terry and found out that he was at this secret work for the last 20 years, despite Miriam giving out that he was never at home or whatever, it was great. But just Terry is just demonstrating now some of the stuff he has, right, and the ability of the software to go through and find everybody, and he'll explain it all.
Okay. I don't really know where to start, but I'll just show you a few places on the internet where you can, where I found information. Just where all this information came from was mostly from the internet, and these are a few of the websites which were useful. This one, for instance, is called FamilySearch.org. That's from the LDS, the Latter-day Saints in Utah in America. They've got lots of records about the whole world online, so you can search for your relatives here. It's sometimes a bit difficult to use the search function, but it changes a lot. But you can find a lot of information here. That's one place. Another place is the National Archives of Ireland. Have got the census from 1901 and the census from 1911 now online. So this is, for instance, the census from 1901 for the Smith family. You can see here Owen Smith, Seamus and Sean, and the rest of the Crosslands. That's their grandfather, I think. Yeah. Their parents were Peter, age 50, and Alice, age 50.
In 1911?
No, this is 1901.
1901.
The ages, you see, are not always accurate. Sometimes they're very inaccurate. Sometimes I was mentioning to Seamus, there's a big jump from the age from 1901 to 1911. And that's often because, I think the reason is in 1909 old age pension arrived in Ireland and people suddenly got a lot older. I think my grandparents on the other side, the Sligo side of the tree, she jumped from 40 to 64 in 10 years.
And there's a spelling change as well.
Spelling changes, yeah. So you have to look for Smith with an I or Smith with a Y. Okay. You have to check everything, yeah. So you've got Peter Smith here and Alice Smith here, the parents of, like you see here, head of family and the wife, and they've got a son and a number of daughters and a number of sons. So the oldest son was Owen. As far as I know, maybe there was an older son, but he's left already. That could happen. And the next one is Mary Ann, daughter. Sometimes with spelling mistakes, but that's Mary Ann, and that's my grandmother. So these two, Owen and Mary Ann, they married two Lennons. And if we go to the next one, you can see the Lennons, and this is the 1911 census. And as you can see, it's in the Irish language, so it took me a while to find this. So this is James Lennon, aged 83 in 1911, married to, how do you say, Court? Codge.
Meaning Catherine.
Catherine, yeah. So this is Catherine McGee. He was aged 83 here, and she was 71. I think they're the right ages. And they had some children. One was John, here, aged 39. And this one is Margaret, I think, right? Margaret in yeah.
Yeah.
So this is John and Margaret. They married Owen and Mary Ann. So brother and sister married brother and sister. So this is a very useful website for looking for information about your ancestors. If you know the town land and the county and the spelling, you have to maybe search around a lot, but you can find a lot of information. So that's a useful place. Another useful place is the Griffiths valuation. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that. It's some kind of survey that was done about the 1850s to detail every farm above a certain size. I think above 4 acres or something. I think. To detail who was the owner of that land, who was the tenant, and how much land did he have, and how much was his house worth. So in this area, everything was owned by the Shirleys, but the Owens, the Smiths were tenant farmers, and the Lennons were tenant farmers. And here's, for instance, this one here on the top one, Patrick Lennon. That's the father of James Lennon that you see here in the census of 1911. And from this website, you can get an image of this valuation here. I don't know if is it still possible to read that?
No. Barely, yeah.
Make this bigger, I think.
It's a bit hard to read.
What's it say, Sean?
Well, it's hard to read it, but it's the Griffiths valuation, which is a very key document in genealogy in Ireland.
Yeah, so this is the Griffiths valuation for Connemara, the Lennons. There were 4 Lennon families living here: Charles Lennon, Peter Lennon, Patrick Lennon, and Michael Lennon. And the Lennon we're talking about here is this one, Patrick Lennon. He's at plot number 5. So if you look at a map of this time, you can find out which plot was number 5. And that's this. Somewhere should be. Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's this one here. This is Connemara here, you can just see. And this is plot 5 here. And this is where we were, this house yesterday.
Is that the Smith house?
No, this is the Lennon house.
Lennon house, sorry, Lennon, yeah.
I'm trying to find the Smith house.
Just checking to see everyone else is watching.
And does it give the acreage there? And that?
It gives the acreage in this other document here. It's a bit maybe difficult, but it's 5 acres. What is it, perch or something?
Roots.
Roots and perches or something, yeah. So not very big, about 5 acres. Not much to that.
So that's one family of the double first cousins,
Yeah.
Smiths and Lennons.
Yeah, 5 acres. So not much. So this is, we were here yesterday looking at this house, so we also walked up to this house here. This is was in a much better state. It was left behind, I think, we decided in 1982. We found some. We went into the living room and there was coats hanging and there was a TV and there was a settee and a bed and.
Should we switch off the cameras just for this piece that you're talking about? You broke into houses.
There was money under the mattress.
Oh yeah.
I think someone had been before us, I think. But it was interesting. But that's nothing to do with our family, but it was just an interesting little detour there. So these are the main things that I used to find the information. And other things outside of this, which I used, was in Dublin. You've got there's 3 places I think you can go to. I think the one I was at was the National Library. You got the National Archive. Wasn't there? It was the National Library in Bishop Street. And there you can look at all sorts of documents. These kind of documents I'm looking at now. Before this come online, I was looking in the National Library at some documents there. And also here in Monaghan, I was up in Clonus in the county library. There's lots of information there. And I was at the parish, Maracloon, spoke to the priest, Father Crow, and had a look at his registers of birth, marriage, deaths, and found some information there. And gathering all that information together resulted in this document, which oh, this is my parking fine in London. This is I don't know if this document is familiar to some people. This is in the Facebook group, This gets produced from all the input you put into the family tree software. It can produce a report, and this is the report it produced. But if we go back to the, let's say the family software now, the family tree software. This is the one I use to enter all the data that I've got. It's called Personal Ancestral File. This is a free piece of software, so anybody can just download this for free and start filling it in. There's no problem. This is made by the LDS, the Latter-day Saints, again in Utah. So they put this bit of software together, and it's very easy to fill in. You just start with yourself. So I started with myself here. I filled in my wife, who's sitting here, and the two children, Sean and Alison. And this splits up into two sections: my father's section and my mother's section, and they're both developed to about the same degree, down to about 5 or 6 generations or something. So if we look at James Lennon, my father, here, you can just click on this and keep going up. This software doesn't give you a good overview, something that looks like a tree, which you can just easily find how someone is related to somebody else. It's not very good like that. It's good for, I think, for entering the data, getting it in and putting it in a database, but this isn't a very graphic way to look at it. But we're working on that and finding something better. So anyway, if it drop down the generations following the Lennons, I get to John and then James and then Patrick. This is the furthest I've got so far. He was born in about 1799 in Connemara. He married Anne Courtney. I'm not sure, I haven't got any more information about her. I found this somewhere. I can't even remember where I found it at the moment, but sometimes you can put it, when you see this black thing here, that means that some notes have been made, and I can show you the notes I've made. This is, he's mentioned in the Griffiths, Plot 5 Connemara, so that I know about it when I look at it 10 years later. I've got nothing else on Anne Courtney. I can't remember where I found that, but it's reliable information, I think, anyway.
And you said 1799. Sorry, did you?
Yeah, that's a guess. Just taking a guess at somebody's age. I thought 1799 sounds better than 1801. It's another century.
They're around.
Yeah. And I'm just guessing the wife was usually about 5 to 10 years younger than the husband, so I put her date as a bit later. So they had, these should be their children there. Yeah, no, these are the children of Patrick and Anne Courtney are listed here. So James Lennon and Lennon. Anne Lennon, that's where the whole McElroy branch begins.
Right, the Cruise group, yeah?
Yeah, the Cruise group. This Anne Lennon here, she married, I'll just do a quick detour to them. Anne Lennon married John McElroy and had a number of children, and they all ended up spread across America. But there's no McElroys involved today, so I'll go back to Lennon and Smith. So we've got Patrick and Lennon and Anne Courtney. They had these children here. I don't know anything else about all these. Where all this ended up, I don't know. I'd like to find out. But this is the next generation coming down towards us, James Lennon. So you can change the focus. Move to primary means you've got the focus on James Lennon now. And these are his children. James Lennon, this is the father of John the Fiddler, which seems to be mentioned a lot. John the Fiddler was supposed to be renowned to be a very good fiddle player, they say. But James Lennon as well, I think, because I found somewhere in some newspaper clipping a little piece about his death in 1913, and he was mentioned as being a very good fiddle player as well in Connemara. So I found their marriage certificate. That's in 1867. They got married. That was in Castle Blaney, because Catherine McGee came from that area, and these days anyway, you always got married in the parish of the bride. So she lived somewhere in the area of Castle Blaney. So anyway, James and Catherine had a number of children. One of those was Lawrence Lennon. That's the connection to Loretta Lennon and Bill Drennan and all Rosemary Lennon.
Mm-hmm.
Lawrence moved to New York and got married to Keena, I think it was. and had a number of children. One of those children was the person I was on Skype with today. So I won't go into those any more than that. Get back to James Lennon and Catherine McGee, their children. One of the children was John Lennon. That's John the Fiddler Lennon, so we make him primary now. Oh, hang on, let's just go back and we'll mention the Smiths here. I should have an Owen here somewhere. No, Margaret, sorry. Margaret, yeah. So we got John Lennon and Margaret Lennon. They married two Smiths. John Lennon married Mary Ann Smith, and Margaret Lennon married Owen Smith.
And Margaret Lennon is the granny of a majority of people here today.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I zoom in on Margaret,
Their mother.
And
It'll be their mother.
yes.
you can see Margaret was born in about 1883 in Connemara, and she died, I think this date is right, 12th of August 1960, if that sounds about right, in Listrom-Turk. She got married to Owen Smith.
Well, she died actually in Dundalk, cared for by Tom and Alice. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
She was living in Dundalk at the time?
She was, yeah. She was living care of Tom, who's here, and his late wife, Alice.
Darlene's
Thank
my wife.
Is that right, Maureen?
Yes.
She had lived with us in an earlier period, after she moved from Rivera. And she died with Tom and Alice.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so that's fixed now, it's Dundalk now. So they got married in 1916. We got married to Owen Smith, who was born in about 1880 and died in 1935 in Listrom-Turk.
Yes.
They had a number of children: Alice Smith, Kathleen Smith, PJ, Molly, and Patsy. And
All here in this photograph.
Yep.
Here in this photograph.
Okay.
And these are when they were born. It's only Molly Smith I haven't got a complete date for, but it's okay. Now, if we zoom down through Molly, maybe. You can see here, Molly Smith married Jimmy Crossan, and they had a number of children: Sean, Gerard, Seamus, Nolene, Ronan, Kieran, and Colin. Let's see if we go back up to James Lennon and Catherine McGee. Make John the focus. John the fiddler that lived in Connemara, got married to Mary Ann Smith from Listrom-Turk. John died in 1942. And Mary died in 1945. We saw their grave yesterday up in Marrowclone. And they had 5 children.
James,
Kathleen, the number of people know here. Kay
yes.
Kay Walsh, yeah.
Lennon or Kay Walsh, yeah. She went to Zimbabwe, to Rhodesia, and then later back to London, and later ended up in Dublin where she died.
Where this little lady's mother, Nolene,
Only.
looked after her in Dublin. In
Yeah.
her years, yeah. And she was your aunt, Terry, isn't that right?
Yeah, she was my aunt. Yeah, I visited her a few times in London when she was there. Another sister, Teresa Ann, she studied nursing in London and went off to South Africa. And we got Michael Lennon, who died young due to some accident. We've got 2 choices of the accident. We're not sure exactly what it is: drowning or diphtheria. It could be either one. And so that was an uncle of mine. And Johnny Lennon was an uncle of mine. Lived in my house in London, or as long as I can remember. And this is Pete Lennon, which a lot of people here will know.
Johnny and Pete, the last 2, were particularly well known and much loved by the people here.
Yeah, yeah.
And before you go off that slide, Geraldine, don't you have a story about Teresa there, who married a Marie, and wasn't it you that talked about one of their sons coming
Oh, yeah, he
to
came
visit?
to our house. Do you remember that, Daddy? this man from South Africa rang the doorbell one day and said he was that lady's son and that
Oh, yeah.
he was working with DHL in South Africa.
Yeah.
And he was
Okay.
over on work, I think, or...
Well, how long ago was that?
holiday.
Do you know how long?
About 30 years ago.
Oh, okay.
20 years
But Terry
ago.
is interested in the context which you have, Sean, I think, anyway, of the Maries in South Africa, right?
Pete Lennon's the son of the fiddler, then, is that
Yeah,
right?
correct, yeah.
Were any of those Pete's family musical?
Pete, we heard Pete was a good fiddler, yeah.
Was it?
What did we hear that? We heard that from somebody yesterday, I think.
I heard it, but I never saw it.
I think it was Patsy Marin said that yesterday.
Yeah.
But I think he's the only one that was musical on this whole list.
I think that Patsy Marin guy might have been confusing generations, something like that.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah.
No.
He was very aware of a drama group.
The
in the
Milltown.
area. He spoke about that a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
And PJ and Patsy and Pete, prior to emigration, seemed to be active in that drama group.
Yeah, the Milltown Drama Society,
Mm.
apparently.
Which would be a very localised, very small
Yeah.
scale thing, I would imagine, but it does reflect the absence of television and other entertainment and how people had to create their own
Yeah,
entertainment.
yeah. I think he also said that it's because they did that in Lent, when you weren't allowed to play music,
Hmm.
but you were allowed to do
Yeah.
plays and stuff, drama. Okay, so that's Lennon. If you go down further than James Lennon, you end up at me here again and my children. That's about, well, just one more thing. To end up producing this document here, which is what they call a descendants narrative. You pick on someone at the top or the bottom, whatever you want to call it, of the tree. In this case it would be Patrick Lennon, that's the oldest one I know, married to Anne Courtney, and it takes all the information that you put into this software and makes a kind of a story out of it. So it says that, like here, the first generation was Patrick Lennon, was born approximately this time, married to Anne Courtney. It's more or less what I've just said in the last 10 minutes or so, written here in a kind of a narrative with the
This
connections.
is what's on Facebook, what you can see now on Facebook.
Yeah, but it's still not very easy to get a good, quick
No.
idea of who's connected to who. It's a bit of work to read it and understand it. But if you look in here, you see all the McElroys are mentioned, and everything coming down from Patrick
Yeah.
will be mentioned. So all the McElroys, the Crossons, the Lennons, the Smiths. And then you end up at the last generation. We got here.
Grace and Donica.
Oh, okay. Just the
Here, yeah,
Yeah,
the seventh
yeah,
generation. We've only two in the seventh generation.
yeah.
Only two people in the seventh generation.
Well, there's some more Lennons in the seventh generation, but I haven't put them in yet.
Ah, right, okay.
Good girl, Denise. Go on. You fly
They're ahead of the posse
Go
today.
on, Denise.
Keeping it going too, do you?
Let's stop.
This group, just before this group breaks up, when everybody is together, we might not be quite as neatly together in the next 24 hours as we are just now. I think it's important on behalf of the group, and Seamus didn't put me up to this, just to say thanks to Deirdre and Seamus
Yeah.
for having us here today, and to Seamus for having such persistence, bothersome persistence at times, but this whole project, but seeing this thing through, and I suppose the fact that so many of us have gathered is credit and recognition to Seamus and everybody here in this household, and our view of the value of this project going forward.
It's typical to say to Mary to say thank you to Mary yesterday for her hospitality. It was typical. You did your aunt very proud. You kept telling us that your aunt would have always said about the esteem that you would have held for the Smiths. Oh God, the Smiths have to come in the front door, but you did your aunt proud, so thank you for that. And I suppose when the whole piece started off, Seamus drove us on and said, well, we have to keep things going. And it was with Mammy and Auntie Maureen and Tom has been the keepers of all of the information. But after talking yesterday, Pat McElroys and indeed his wife Maureen have plenty of information of to talk about everything that's going on. Everybody, I suppose, I was nominated as a chairman, and that's one of the pieces that Seamus did. But also to Terry and to his wife Miriam, you made the biggest journey to come over here. And notwithstanding the Seamus drove us on, you guys have probably been the catalyst to start the whole thing going. So on behalf of everybody, thank you for that.